I am Eric Spry, owner of Spry.
What key life experiences have formed who you are today?
My dad has property out kind of out in the boonies in Michigan. Spent a lot of time there growing up, and then just have always had an interest in the arts. I don't know really where that comes from, and it's always been a bit of a passion of mine. I always thought it was because of growing up, spending a lot of time in the woods and outside, but he did too. So I don't know where that came from, but I grew up in a great house, great parents that encouraged creativity. So that was helpful.
How did you become passionate and involved in architectural practice?
My brother, who I mentioned earlier, competed in mechanical drafting and he did really well. And when I was in eighth grade, he told me that I should go into architecture because he thought that was more creative and more of what he thought I would enjoy. So the teacher at the time had this amazing library of architecture books. So he had all the ones that you would expect. So at 14 years old, I got exposed to all of this incredible architecture. And then in those 4 years of high school, we competed in these design and drafting contests and got more exposure because the guy who ran that contest would always bring in a guest speaker. So I got to see Frank Gehry speak one time, which was pretty amazing. So this was all in high school. So not many people in high school get exposed to so many great architects. But that's where the passion came from. Really, it was three projects. It was Falling Water, of course, Thorn Crown Chapel, and the Bavinger House. I think that's where the passion for architecture really began.
What are your core values and how are they reflected in your practice?
It's all going to sound like a cliche, but I think a lot of artists just sort of want other people to feel the inspiration that they feel. And I think I'd fall into that category. When I look at nature, as an example, since we talked about that, and I see things that inspire me, just want to be able to give other people a window into that inspiration to try to help them see the same thing that I see, whatever that may be. So the goal is always for them to just wake up feeling great, wake up feeling inspired, wake up feeling like they're in a piece of music. Um, you know, I like all kinds of different music from jazz, blues, rock, all the way to classical. But my favorite piece of music is Beethoven's Symphony. And Beethoven was kind of the heavy metal guy of his age, and the way that music makes me feel is the way I want people to feel when they're in those buildings. The way I feel when I go through Falling Water, or the way I felt in Thorn Crown or in Taliesin West. The way those things make me feel is the way that I want to make other people feel. So that's really the core value. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. It's not always achievable, and it's not always achieved, but that's the goal.
What's your design process? And including your design thinking, visualization, and realization. So how do you go about that?
First thing I want to do is try to solve for function, and then of course all the things that I'm sure you're taught in school about site studies. In fact, some of those sketches behind me on the cork board are site studies. So I do all those kind of things, sun angles and views and topography and vegetation and entry into the site, exit, all those kinds of things that I'm sure you deal with in school. Do all those kind of studies. And then at that point, I sit down and do a design and then present it, go back and forth a lot with revisions. And then once it's approved, then it goes into construction documents and permitting and all of that.
How do you collaborate with others to realize your impactful work?
Um, so this is with the owners, of course, the clients throughout the design phase. I collaborate a lot with the civil engineer. I design all the structural stuff myself. I design the electrical and lighting. I design the mechanical because all those are details that are important. So I work closely with all those engineers. I've been doing this since the mid '90s, and I found people that I really work well with, and that sort of get the aesthetic that I'm trying to achieve. I design it, and then they come back and tell me the size of things and all of that, and then I have to make tweaks. You know, there's always some back and forth. And I'll collaborate sometimes with interior designers, and then of course the probably next to the owner, the biggest collaboration is with the contractor.
Do you have a favorite reading or architect that has made a large influence on you?
My favorite is probably Mies van der Rohe, and the Barcelona Pavilion is still one of my favorite works. I'm inspired mostly by music, honestly. Probably even more so than architects. There's a kind of a almost a one-to-one parallel between music and architecture, because art unfolds like a really good piece of music, and and it has its ups and its downs, and it's moments of inspiration and it's moments of kind of a little bit lower. It's very much like music. But I always thought that was a good definition of architecture. It's better than anything else I've heard.
And what advice would you give yourself if you were beginning in the profession today?
I knew that if I wanted to be good as an architect, I mean, not published and all of that, not be perceived as good, but actually do good work, that I would have to learn from people that were doing good work. So maybe the advice I'd give to myself is just relax, give it time. All the things, when you ask somebody that's older than 50, that's what they'll always say. They tell their younger self, just relax, don't get so anxiety ridden, give it time, take a deep breath, just practice, get really good at it, and it'll take time, but you'll get there. So I think if I could go back, I just tell myself to relax.